Hello, friends, and welcome back. It is Rates and Barrels right here on The Athletic. I am Chris Welsh. You can find me on Twitter at @IsItTheWelsh. That is Eno Saris. You can find on Twitter at Eno Saris. It's very easy. You can do that. You can also find us over at The Athletic, theathletic.com/rates and barrels. Get yourself signed up for $1 per month. It's ridiculous for you to not sign up. Dynasty ranks, mine are up there. Probably an update coming in here soon. I actually also just recently released a fun first-year player draft article. If you're looking at prospects and how he put that together, you can check out there. And of course, all of Eno's stuff, draft kit if you got like a last minute draft. So go and check it out today, theathletic.com/rates and barrels. Hello, Mr. Eno Saris. How about baseball coming in days? How about that?
I'm excited. Flying to New York tomorrow. Gonna have that event at Other Half on Thursday, and going to attend a Yankees game over the weekend before my kids show up. Then
Anthony Volpe.
I'm also going to traipse around New York and find the best beer places because I'm allowed to write about beer still. So I think I'm going to do something like the best beer spots in New York if you're in town for a baseball game. So,
what were we just talking about off air? We just talking about
I should drink less beer. We just can't.
We just can't escape it. More. I think it's more. It's more. That's a bucket list. It's so ridiculous too. I've never been to New York. I want to go to New York. I'm a man less traveled around the country. I don't have many routes around the country, and that's
we used
where
to live there for 10 years. So it's exciting to see some friends and also just see the city. It's been so long that I'm sure it's changed, and it'd be fun to see how it's changed. But yeah, I was very happy when I was at my physical with my doctor to report. Most weeks I do keep it under sort of 14. More like 12. I don't tell her that they were, IPAs and big cans, not the little cans and whatever. So already doing some funky math to get to 12 to 14. And she's like, oh, that's too much. You got to get it down to 7. I was like, 7.
You're like, per day? What are we going to do? 7. What are we talking about here? Where does New York rank in the beer land as far as like homegrown beers?
It used to be bad when I was there in the early 2000s, and there was stuff going on in San Diego and Portland and Seattle where we're out in front back then. But it's really caught up, and I think Other Half, I'm really happy to be partnered with them because I think they're a big part of why beer is great in New York now. But there's all sorts of other places, KBBC, Upstate. There's Suarez family. There's Finback. There's all sorts of really cool breweries now. A lot of them in Brooklyn and Queens. So going to figure out a way to tie these to the baseball stadiums. The harder one is actually probably the Yankee Stadium because there's not, I don't think, that much great beer like up in the Bronx and and upper Manhattan. Manhattan has high property values, and it's expensive, so it's kind of hard to like start up a brewery in it. But I do know some good beer bars that are along some trains that get to the Yankee Stadium, so I think I'll focus on those. But then Queens is super easy as a destination. There's a lot of good beer out in Queens, and you can do that on the way to Mets, to the Mets Stadium. So
yeah, I need to do a tour with you on that because I'm a bourbon guy. If people know, we should you and I should trade out. We should trade out. You show me a beer, I'll show you a bourbon, and then
I used to have my favorite bourbon bar was in Williamsburg. And I bet you it's still there, right across from the Williamsburg L stop. There was a bourbon bar. It'd always be the weekend because I didn't live in Brooklyn. So I'd get out of the Williamsburg L stop and I'd be like, well, that's where we're going to start the weekend.
While I'm here,
with a shot of bourbon.
When in Rome. All right, that's my thing. Exactly. Yeah, I struggle with like high end IPAs and stuff like that. I'm definitely more of a crap taste in beer, but I have a advanced palate in bourbon. But you and I share.
In New York, they almost often had the sort of Jack and PBR specials, where like they'd have like a shot of something and a cheap beer. And that was something I did a fair amount when I was there.
It's a little too early right now for that to sound so good. By the way, your New York stop. Give one more plug on that. What's happening again? That's on Friday, I believe.
Brewing on Thursday. We're doing a watch party. If you've missed out on RSVPing for the panel that's afterwards, that's fine. You can still hang out with me, have my beer staring into the shift, a collaboration with Other Half, and my sandwich called the Knuckleball, which they'll be doing just on Thursday. So we'll be there starting at 4:00 when the Mets game starts. I don't think the Mets game will be the only game on TV. I can't promise, but I have some tricks up my sleeve, and we'll figure out how to get as many games as we can on those different TVs. But
what was the name of the place again?
Party Other Half, and the one that's in Brooklyn, the one that's in Other Half, that's in it's called Red Hook, and it's on Center Street. So Other Half on Center Street in Brooklyn.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you have the ability, you guys should go out and definitely do that. It is Project Prospect today. We're talking prospects, and there's a lot of prospect stuff. Actually, Eno and I spent quite a bit of time beforehand just like digging into nerd things and having fun that we'll kind of intertwine in this. There are some interesting prospect pieces of news I'm going to throw out with some assignments, because we are in, as I've explained to Eno and really everybody right now, we're just in this limbo period, because it's like the spring training has just ended. There's a little bit more minor league spring training, but like AAA hasn't gone quite. So we're like 2 weeks out from having like really good, solid prospect stuff, but we are getting assignments. So we've got a little bit of news in that. And I've pieced together some of the most interesting prospect stats from spring training, as far as like maybe someone leading in a certain area. We're also going to tie it into potentially some hard hit data that we were able to find on spring training for prospects. So we're going to.
I might have to eat some crow. We'll have to see about it.
We'll see. We'll see. You have a certain guy that might have hit a homer yesterday and looked quite good, who steals a lot of bases. We'll see if there's crow being eaten here. But this is going to be an interesting one, and I'm going to let you really tag into this. It just so happened I had this as my first piece of news here. I think we might have curtailed it yesterday, because I don't even think I realized the severity of it. Was Grayson Rodriguez was sent down by the Orioles, and the minute I saw it, I kind of excused it as like, oh, they probably just didn't need like the fifth starter or whatever, and they sent him down. But that wasn't the case, and not the case at all. There were actually some really big words said by the Orioles about Grayson Rodriguez. They didn't really mince words, if you will, in sending him down. So this isn't just about him being sent down. This actually also tied in. You just happened to also drop a tweet, which got you into the fray of baseball about Grayson, where you were talking about his stuff. We saw Brandon McCartney, former pitcher, in there, and a lot of other people. So why don't you relay what you said in the tweet? You can also relay the words that they put out there about Grayson, which was really just again, aggressive might be the word, in how they sent him down.
I mean, the biggest thing was that his GM is out here talking about, we expected a better version of him. And I thought that was a little bit harsh, because, and my tweet was about sort of a reaction to that, being like, he had the same stuff plus as Sandy Alcantara this spring, and it was better than Hunter Green. So like, I was pushing back on the sort of negativity. We were hoping he would show up as a better version of himself. So
it sounds like your dad saying, I'm not mad, but I'm disappointed. Like that hurts.
Yeah. And I think if I had been the GM, my approach would have been more like, hey, he had the same stuff plus as Sandy Alcantara this spring. We're just asking him to refine it and to put the finishing touches on it, and come back up here on a roll. Bam. That's what I would have said. I would have said, get him in the right mindset, get him on a roll, bring him back up. And Brandon McCarthy's reaction was on that level, where he was saying, yeah, it sucks to debut when you're not pitching well. And, other than stuff plus, Grayson Rodriguez's results have not been great. He has walked, I think, 9 in 17 innings. He's given up hits. He hasn't gotten through the fourth, which is something that Mike Elias brought up. So, there are some performance issues here, probably. What I got embroiled in was the whole discussion about, is it service time manipulation? And I kind of knew that was happening, but my tweet was more an affirmation that I still 100% believe in Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah.
If you have a 119 stuff plus, like, remember Hunter Green last year came up and did struggle a little bit first. He did throw the ball right down the middle a couple too many times, and he did have some issues. But I'm super excited about Hunter Green this year, and I'm super excited about Grayson Rodriguez this year. And so that's why I thought I would pair them and push back on the idea that because Grayson Rodriguez had this poor spring, that we should think any differently about him. And you know, even in the service time conversation, there were some good points being made. Craig Goldstein from Baseball Prospectus was saying, well, if this is a meritocracy and there's actually spring battles, and so you're actually like, you care about spring numbers, then why is Franchi Cordero not on this team? Because Franchi Cordero beat the crap out of the ball and hit like 500 this spring and is not on the roster. But Grayson Rodriguez over here, who Grayson Rodriguez is, you know how good he is, and you've known it for a long time, but 3 or 4 spring starts, that's enough to send him back down. So I will say that I don't want to take sides in the service time battle, because I've done this before where I was wrong. I thought the Rangers were manipulating service time on Willie Calhoun, and it just turns out that Willie Calhoun is not very good at defense and maybe not even a major leaguer. So I was wrong about that. And so sometimes the team does know better. I don't want to always be like, oh, the team knows better. I hate that sort of appeal to authority, But at the same time, like they know a little bit more about what the player's mindset is. So maybe even Michael Elias knows more about Grayson Rodriguez. Maybe he knows that Grayson Rodriguez needs some fire under his ass, and so he needed to say these things publicly. So I just wanted to say basically that I still believe in Grayson Rodriguez, and I think he'll be up in 3 to 4 weeks. If you're wondering about what to do and whatever, I think he'll be up in 3 to 4 weeks, and I think he'll dominate. So. All these people being like, "Oh, he couldn't get out of the fourth," and stuff. All these people tell me, "No, but you don't know ball," and stuff gets you noticed, but command gets. I'm sorry, man. Command in a 4-game stint is just not useful. Don't talk to me about command in a 4-game stint. I don't care. Like, it's not statistically useful.
I thought I kind of echoed those statements, not the command issue, but when you and I were talking off air, that if spring doesn't matter so much, and this guy better than anybody, he has also got his catcher that he came up with in the minor leagues. You have that guy for the tutelage. If you know all of this and spring doesn't matter, then why did spring matter so much? Why did 3 or 4 starts have such an impact on it? Also tying in those words, tying in the kind of aggressiveness of how they approached sending him back down. I thought that was odd, and it does reek of service manipulation, simply because they've got Gunnar Henderson. So if you think about it, Gunnar Henderson is their ticket for that extra pick chase that they do. It's a top 100 prospect that breaks camp.
He's their rookie of the year.
He's their rookie of the year guy. So they could manipulate every other person if they want. And it kind of would make sense getting back to where a team would do that. I mean, I don't think they should, of course, but it makes sense that you could pair some of the results in with some of the manipulation. But at the end of the day, I thought it was silly, because I thought there's a pretty, nonchalant, just like, hey, he's still got great stuff. Just because he's getting sent down, it didn't seem like a big thing. And it seemed like it turned into just this big old thing. But I think it's because you tweeted it. I think it was, I think if I tweeted it, everyone's just like, bye-bye, but you tweeted it, and it's kind of like a big piece of a conversation. You get a lot more people jumping into the fray there,
Yeah. And I could have added one more line being like, I still believe in 1000%. And then I would have stayed out of the service time battle. So it's on me that I didn't edit that to be clearer about, that. But I also thought it would be interesting to put that piece of information into the discussion about service time. Because I thought there's too many people being like, looking at the actual results and saying he wasn't ready. And I'm like, Ross Stripling just gave up 9 runs yesterday. Demote him.
Yeah, Dylan Cease gave up 11 early in the spring and didn't get out of the the second bet. Yeah, I don't know. It's a wild thing. The thing that's going to be a bad look, though, and is going to create a bigger conversation. Let's say I can never follow the dates anymore of whatever it is, Super 2 and stuff. If it's April 24th, if he comes up the 25th,
he's going to dominate for 3 weeks. Then he's going to be like, yeah, he did everything. And maybe that's right. Maybe he needed to dominate, get in a better mindset, and come back up. But still, it's going to be like, oh, so he's ready 5 days after the mystery date.
Very interesting. All right, some other prospect news that's floating out there. we kind of had some questions about Christian Encarnacion-Strand, or at least I did, and why he didn't make it. I'm not sure this is exactly tied, but we found out a couple days ago that both Ellie De La Cruz and Christian Encarnacion-Strand with the Reds are staying back, and they're not going to be reporting early on because they're both struggling with a few different injuries. Ellie looks like he might be back about a week or so after the full season starts in, and Christian Encarnacion-Strand looks like late April. So that kind of stinks with CES, because I think that does alter that timeline a little bit, because he wouldn't be an option. We know Votto's going on the IL.
Maybe he could have made the team otherwise.
Yeah, if they had some early struggles or something like that with Votto not in, but now you have
Votto not being in. Yeah, that's a roster spot.
And now you have a month-ish where he's not even around, and then he's going to have to get set back in the minor league. So that kind of sets him back, and Ellie is going to be set back just a tiny bit, but I thought those were important pieces.
So I guess like Steer, his playing time is probably full-time right now.
I think they gave him the third base gig.
Yeah, and then Myers plays some first, or maybe Vossler makes the team.
Yeah, I don't know what they plan. That's a good question on the first spot, because I think Steer is locked into third. But if Steer struggles, they don't really have an outlet for CES, at least for a month. So Steer's going to be,
he's going to get runway. Yeah, he's going to get runway. And I don't think guys like Friedel, Fairchild, Benson, Senzel play first. So I think it's either Myers or Vossler. Maybe Myers plays first to begin the season, and that gives Fraley and Friedel and Benson more time. And I guess Senzel is hurt too. So it might be Friedel, Fraley, and Benson for 3-4 weeks playing nearly full time.
Yeah, and watch the stolen base numbers too with those guys. Guys like actually all three of those outfielders are sneaky stolen base guys, but Benson might be free off the wire for a little bit for some cheap early saves in season if he's going to get 2 or 3 weeks. I said saves, stolen base. I don't know why I do that. Catcher, closer is my mix, and then saves
the worst.
and
steals and saves are the worst.
I just do it all
categories.
The time.
You just lump them together.
Semi-prospect piece of news was it looked like Logan O'Hoppe was going to get sent down. Weirdly, another stupid thing, but then Max Stassi suffered an injury, and it looks like Logan O'Hoppe is back, and he's back in there. And I've got him on 2 catching roster teams, which is huge for me because I put a lot of stock into him. But he had this is another one of those weird things where it's like a poor spring didn't give him the gig. I don't know how invested or how much you care about Logan O'Hoppe, but looks like he should be good early on, which might be able to help carry him through the season because he's got some real power.
Yeah, I like him. He makes more contact and combines it with power. So many times with catchers, you've just got the large strikeout rate and the occasional pop, and they become these sort of 225, 18 homer guys, so I feel like there's, 10 of those. So he has a chance to be more of a 250, 260 guy. He could hit 20 homers. His batted ball stats were bad, but it was 16 plate appearances last year. So I'm willing to pay attention here as he gets going. I've always liked Stassi a little bit, but Stassi's getting older as it goes on. Matt Tice is a deep league pickup. He's going to be a backup catcher probably, but he has all sorts of eligibilities, and if he plays well enough, he could sort of stay on the team as a third catcher / utility guy. So there's that's to watch for deeper leagues, but O'Hoppe could be relevant in 12 teamers. He has that kind of upside. Yeah,
I completely agree. I put this together, and this is also a shout out to MLB Pipeline that put out a big thing about this. And I just curated a few, what I thought were really interesting assignments. So that's kind of been a big thing. It's funny. I was over at Monday. I can't even keep my days straight. Monday over at the Padres, and was still asking Ethan Salas, the phenom catcher, 16-year-old phenom catcher, if he really is going to start at A-ball. And that's been kind of a big piece of conversation. Will the 16-year-old really push A-ball? And he still doesn't know. And he's just like, I'm not sure yet. Whatever they tell me is what I'm going to do. That type of stuff. But he doesn't know. But we do have assignments on some players. And I put these together because I thought these were all really fascinating. I'm going to burn through them real quick. And then if we want to piece 1 or 2 together, we can. These assignments jumped out to me for prospects. Yuri Perez with the Marlins going to AAA. Jackson Churio, who Eno and I talked about early on in the year, going to Double-A. Jackson Merrill, who was the youngest in the AFL, had a great spring. High A is what Pipeline was announcing. You also had Harry Ford, who was one of the stars of the WBC, going only to High A. And the Pirates have Henry Davis, who was in the AFL, going to Double-A, and they're putting Indy Rodriguez at Triple-A, which makes him be one step above. So a couple of these, are about guys that are closer than maybe we expected, and a couple are further. Obviously, the furthers are Jackson Merrill and Harry Ford, but like Yuri Perez at AAA really is a small injury away, and what might have been a guy that most people aren't counting on. Everyone's drafting Andrew Painter and Ricky Tiedemann and stuff like that. With Perez at AAA, there's a real possibility that he could be a guy that beats Ricky Tiedemann to the majors, because it is an injury away and the Marlins suffer them all the time. Maybe they have a little bit more depth than we expect, and it's like, Braxton Garrett and stuff would go to it, but I don't know. It's a few struggles and an injury away from Yuri Perez being up sometime in May and putting up some real fantasy value.
Yeah, I think he's knocking on the doorstep. I guess he's gone past Braxton Garrett. I would guess that because, especially if it's a long-term replacement, then I think you just go to Yuri Perez. Maybe if it's a 15-day or just a missed start, maybe Garrett comes up. Maybe they use Garrett. How you have those three options before you get in trouble.
Yeah,
in a year now. Maybe they use up all of Garrett's options on short-term stuff, and then if it's a long-term one, Yuri Perez comes up. So there's, or maybe they alternate them, because that way you have 6 options. But in any case, I think that with Jesus Luzardo's injury history, with Trevor Rogers, sporting a 5 ERA in the spring, my stuff numbers like him. The strikeouts are there, 17 in 18 innings. But at some point, if he continues to struggle, his spot could be in peril. Edward Cabrera's had some injuries in the past, and I don't think Braxton Garrett's spring, although he did 13 strikeouts in 15 innings, 5 walks in 15 innings, is a little bit much, and he just didn't. He doesn't have the top end stuff. So if there is a long-term solution, a long-term need, I think Yuri Perez is the one that steps in. And it's virtually a guarantee that there will be, because that's just how injuries work.
It's hard to say to like stash. If you have an NA spot, I think Yuri Perez actually might be a really good stash. If and when Yuri Perez hits the wire, what type of aggressiveness do you think you're going to have? Because we've talked about Fott, we've talked about T. I think the rank order would, at this point, is like Grayson, Tiedemann, Fott. I'm just assuming. I'm also projecting. You can tell me differently. Is Yuri Perez? I
might go Grayson, Yuri.
Oh, Yuri would be 2 on that list as far as aggressive.
I think so. I mean, I like Tiedemann. I think the numbers are there. But they also have Mitch White as paper, and Braxton Garrett is paper in Florida. But the Blue Jays may be more concerned with floor than ceiling, at least in the short term. If you think about it, the Blue Jays want to win every game. They don't want to rush a prospect to fit a need. Also, Tiedemann had some injury concerns.
Yeah, he was dealing with the injuries on the back half of spring, by the way. So
slightly, it doesn't seem like it's a major one, but that's enough for me to put him back. So I would, and Fought, like, I know you love him, and I don't hate him. I have a 105 stuff plus for him. That's pretty good. But I've liked Nelson. Nelson got the job. Dre Jameson's on that roster, and probably has more length than your typical reliever. So Dre Jameson could end up being the closer or a swing guy that steps in. Maybe just a little bit more of an obstacle. So that's my ranking. Those are my 5 favorite. It goes Grayson, Yuri, Tiedemann, Fott.
Yeah, and don't be surprised when Yuri beats Tiedemann to the majors. I just thought that was a good aggressive, and it's not that like he shouldn't have been there or anything like that. He got to Double-A and he had 17 starts in Double-A. But he's 19 years old. I just wasn't sure. Maybe the Marlins would go to Double-A, then push Triple-A. He's going to be 20 though. On the
I think they're saying something with that. That's an aggressive placement. I think all these guys, their teams are saying something about them. Churio is someone that, you could look at his line and be like, oh, here's another sort of pop-up prospect from A-ball that dominated there. And, let's wait and see if he can make the jump to AA. The jump from high A to AA is as big as the one from AA to major leagues, blah, 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 there's a sort of conventional wisdom out there. I think the team is saying with this, like, we believe in him 100%, and we're moving him along.
The only thing working against him, so I think you could look at him being at AA and people could be like, holy crap, could this happen now? I don't think so, because they're just flush with outfielders. You also got to remember, Sal Frelick didn't make the roster. Joey Weimer got optioned. Those are two guys they are going to see to the fullest. That goes along with Garrett Mitchell. They've still got Yelich. I mean, there are guys there. I think it's going to be really hard. I think they're going to press a full half season of AA and a full half season of AAA. And then I think he goes to the AFL and he's on the radar for next year. And I think that's what's interesting about fantasy people, where Churio might have felt a lot farther away. I think he's a real, his clock starts next season of it might be time. I don't think it's this year.
It's a little bit aggressive this year, just the age. And I think also they kind of want to sort through their other outfielders, as you mentioned, including their major league outfielders. I think there's going to be some pressure on Tyrod Taylor and Garrett Mitchell this year to establish themselves as major league regulars. Because if they don't, the door is open. There's guys behind them. So
one of the ones
need to produce a little bit.
One of the other positive one, just want to throw out for especially a lot of people that are playing in two catcher leagues of whatever capacity it is. Andy Rodriguez has to be on your radar, especially at this point too. And not to say that he wasn't always going to be the next guy up, but Henry Davis just went to the AFL. He's got his struggles and stuff like that, but I don't know. Henry Davis was a much bigger name. Andy Rodriguez doesn't have the body of a traditional catcher, 5'9", maybe $180, but last year had 25 homers, hit .323 with a 400 OBP, and he's now at AAA on a Pirates team that's the Pirates. It's the Pirates. I mean, the Pirates are just like the A's are the A's. Then there's the Pirates, and then there's other baseball teams that do big roster stuff. So what I'm getting at is anytime Andy Rodriguez can be up, because what are they holding back from? And if that is the case, this is a really good, solid hitter with big power that does stuff, that does fantasy stuff. He's not the 225-18 homer guy that you were talking about. And he would be one of those top catching radar guys, maybe the top guy. If you're really thinking about all the catchers that could come up this year, I think he's the number one catcher to pay attention to. I don't foresee it's going to be anytime soon, but he is first man up. I don't know if you have any Andy Rodriguez thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking service time relationship manipulation. It's you wonder what the deal is here, because I guess the person making the roster over Andy is Jason DeLay, non-roster 28-year-old. Then maybe there's something they want to see if there's something there, or maybe they just want to, try to get him into the organization and then send him down and bring Andy up, in season when it's harder for other teams to make room on their 40-man. Maybe there's some sort of games being played there. With Andy, though, I've talked to a few scouts about this, and it's interesting. There's people who say that, Tamar Johnson is the Pirates' best prospect, and is he a weird fit as a best prospect because he's undersized and he's a second baseman, and that that's your best prospect? I've heard other scouts say, no, their best prospect is Andy Rodriguez. And I think that's an interesting sort of flip to switch, because switch to flip. Because I think then you realize that this is a really interesting prospect that makes contact, has patience, has power, has speed, has athleticism, may not end up at catcher, but is still a catcher for now. And I didn't hear a bad word about his catching.
Yeah.
So this is someone that is going to be up soon. I don't know if it's worth stashing, but even look at his projections. They're all for, a 315 to 320 OBP with league average power or better. Like, how many catchers did that last year?
Not a lot. They're
Let me see
probably
here. You have to take the qualified filter off because there's like 3 qualified catchers. But this is how many catchers had league average power and a 315 OBP or better. 7.
7. What is league average? Are you going about like 250?
150 ISO.
Oh, 1 year. Oh, wait. Okay. I see what
So
you're saying.
you got
150
Travis d'Arnaud, Sean Murphy. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Rutschman, the Contreras brothers, Will Smith, Real Muto, Murphy, and d'Arnaud. And that's it.
So you might have theoretical top
10
catcher one.
Yeah.
Catcher one when he comes up. So keep an eye on him. The AAA assignment above Henry Davis, I definitely think says a lot. The only other one I just want to throw out, the Orioles AAA team is going to be a monster. And they have all these guys that are ready, whether they're manipulating or not. On top of Grayson Rodriguez, they've got Jordan Westberg, Colton Cowser, and Connor Norby. It is a monster of a team, maybe one of the better minor league teams out there of future star power. All guys that can end the year with the Orioles, and all guys you should pay attention to, have very, very, very fantasy relevant. Jordan Westberg might be the most underrated. You and I talked a decent amount about him in spring. He was having a really good spring, but he might be the most underrated of all of those guys as well. So watch out.
He's the one I'm actually probably the most excited about. And I think he's going to be maybe the first one up because not only did he have a good spring, but let's see here. Let me get his strikeout rate. Strikeout rate is one of the few things I care about in spring. That's a little high, 28%. But it is against largely major league players. And that would be good news because I don't want him to cross over into the 30%. I do think that over time he could whittle that strikeout rate number down, but I think he's going to have good patience and I think he's going to have good power, and he's also going to steal some bags. And I also think the team's a little weak where he plays. I think that there's big opportunity if Jorge Mateo stumbles at all, or if Adam Frazier doesn't take advantage of the new shift rules and play his way into a regular role there. Urias, it was a waiver claim, Ramon Urias. So those 3 people are not unsurmountable.
Yeah, and once service time is over, everybody's game for the Orioles, right? It's open season once the service clock has officially started or stopped. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, among these hitters, the only one that I think could be relevant in 3 weeks is Westberg. Among these ones that we said in particular.
Oh, interesting. Okay, you think it could happen early? I mean, I kind of agree with you on that. I think.
And Andy Rodriguez.
And okay, so of all of these, not just those Orioles, all of these prospects.
Of the prospects that we just named that had interesting assignments, I think Andy Rodriguez and Jordan Westberg are the closest to the major leagues.
Okay, so pay attention and maybe keep your fab and your waiver claims ready. Do that. We're talking about some spring stats. These were some outliers I put together, and Eno and I had some fun off air about this. I went and looked over. It's kind of on like, when you look at spring stats, they kind of do the qualifications. I think it's usually like 40 plus at bats or whatever. So it eliminates some players and stuff like that. But I put together some of the prospect outliers that stood out that put up, one individual, or in some cases they popped up on a couple spots that really stood out in one area. And wouldn't you know it, we've got 3 Colorado Rockies that stand out. Now, one of the reasons behind this, we have to give you a caveat for a couple of the stats we're going to add, is the only ballpark in Arizona, stupidly, by the way, of all the spring training teams that has data, that has advanced, that has TrackMan and Baseball Savant stuff, is Salt River Fields. That's the only one that you can get advanced analytics and data on, because for whatever reason, none of the others will put it in. It's really stupid, and it's frustrating during the AFL. So Arizona Diamondbacks and Colorado Rockies are going to show up because this is their home place, or if a player was playing there, you'll get it. So that's one of them, because the 3 stats we have, I'm going to just throw them out here, not to take any thunder away, and you can break through. One of them was an actual category, Michael Toglia, who we've talked some about. Michael Toglia actually was tied in runs at first all spring. 15 runs, that was tied for first among all hitters during spring. But his other 2 prospect battery mates showed up we were looking at EVs in spring. Zach Veen, who you and I have gone back and forth about, had a top 10 exit velocity of all players, not just prospects. He was the number one, actually, he was the number 2 prospect after Jordan Walker with a 115.3 max EV. And El Harris Montero had the 26th best max EV. I think I wrote this down wrong because I said 116.1. That would be higher than Zach Veen, but he had the top 26 biggest EV. So El Harris Montero, Zach Veen, and Michael Tolia all showed up big in spring.
Yeah, Montero had a 113.1.
113. Okay, so I wrote that down wrong.
Just a little bit of context on those. A top quartile max EV in the big leagues is over 112.5. If you just want to remember one number as being elite or top of the league, or an 80 raw power, I think 113 is the easy number to remember.
So if you see a 113 or higher max EV, you go, oh, that is an elite raw power guy.
That's like a 70-80 raw power. I mean, it should be by the 20 to 80 scale. You're breaking it up into 20 percentiles, right? If you wanted to really make a difference between 70 and 80, then 113 could be 70, and 80 might be 120. I mean, 120 has only been crossed by Judge, Cruz, and Stanton. Is that an 80? If you start talking about 118, Ryan McMahon had a 117.7 this spring. So maybe 117 is 80 and 113 is 70. Anyway, either of those is good. That's good raw power. I'm really surprised on Veen. I saw the minor league strikeout. I saw the minor league strikeout rates and liked them to some extent, but I didn't like the ISOs because I thought a 170 ISO from Veen with 50 stolen bases, that could be all legs. I know he hit 11 homers, but I was worried that this is an all legs guy. But this is good raw power from him. And with a guy that makes contact, he's much more likely to access that raw power and figure it out. There are other guys on this top list that, Hylan Ortiz from the Phillies, also had a, what is it that he had? He had a one.
I'm looking here. I just had it.
114.6, right? So close to, 70 raw power. Well, look at his strikeout rates up and down the minor leagues, 30%. And because we'd been thinking about talking about our biases and prospecting, to me, a large strikeout rate is something that I usually don't get with. I'm making an exception for Ellie De La Cruz right now, but the bust rates on the high strikeout rates are a thing. And I also just wanted to point this out. If I look at the major leagues and I just take the population of players that strike out more than 25% of the time in the major leagues with 250 plate appearances, the median number is 96 WRC plus. It's not 100. So the guys who strike out a lot in the major leagues, and these are guys who succeeded, they've stayed in the major leagues. They have enough power. They're not prospects. They don't even average out to 100. They average out to 96. So your ceiling is a little bit lower by definition if you strike out a lot. And so Hylan Ortiz, I know that he's not a big prospect. He's got a 40 future value over at Fangraphs, and he didn't make anybody's top 100, I don't believe. But also, just generally, if I was looking for a pickup, even though he has that nice max EV, I'd much rather have somebody like Zach Veen. I know that's obvious because Veen is higher on lists and people like him better and so on. But I'm just saying, even if you took the names off of these stat lists, I'd be much more likely to take Zach Veen because of that strikeout rate paired with that raw power.
Well, this gets into a bigger conversation we're probably not going to fully dive into. It's actually something we were originally kind of going to do in this episode, was talking about the advent of, I'm actually going to use Dylan White's just term, shout out to him, the Robo Scout. That's kind of the idea of there's a huge uptick, for better, for worse. I'm a little bit pushbacky on it being the be all end all of where people will take an algorithm, or projection or whatever, and they'll just take the stats and they'll spit out, and this is the rank. This is the new prospect rank based on stats. And I don't like that. I think it's a perfect marriage with the other things that come with ranking and stuff like that. But that's one of the things you're kind of alluding to, and you and I were talking about, that it's like it can get messy. You've used the Abraham Toro thing in there. It can get messy when you're simply just looking at some of the categorical stuff in here. And you were saying your bias is to move away from high strikeout guys. Mine is to I give way too much credit to like high contact based players that might have, like Robert Hassel was an example of someone in high school. He was like one of the best high school hitters coming out. Jared Kelnick was actually kind of the same way. That paired with insane athleticism of talent. And Khalil Watson is a prime example of that. He is an insane strikeout guy, like almost a 40% strikeout rate last year. He was a mess last year, completely redefined. Looks like he's redefined who he is this year. I was just talking to Jeff Ponce from Baseball America. His swing has become more simplified. He's not striking out the same level. He's making better decisions, and he has all the talent in the world. So like my biases tend to go to contact-based players that they can overcome. Zach Veen, he can overcome his inability to consistently tap into power, and I'll overlook crazy strikeout numbers for insane prior talent of athleticism like Khalil Watson. Those are like two very stark.
But it's interesting that they're kind of in different directions, right?
They
But
totally
I like that because it allows you to not overlook some people, like you're basically saying, if they have good contact, I'll probably like them. There'll be more caveats. I don't like everybody who has a low strikeout rate. Or if they are super athletic, I can overlook some of that. And I think that's a really good way of doing it, because if I'm a little bit more like, oh, I really want to have a low strikeout rate and good batted ball stats, I'm going to avoid the Abraham Toro problem by asking to at least hit a ball 113, or at least hit a ball 110. And pair that with an 18% strikeout rate, and then I will love you, And that's I'm trying to learn from Toro and add something to it. But I like your sort of if then sort of like separate like paths in the wood, because I probably would. I'm trying to learn. Like I said, I'm making room for Elliot Cruz on rosters. I missed Jazz Chisholm.
Insane talent too. He's the prime example. He's actually the example of like Khalil Watson. He's a guy that he was also so insanely pull heavy in the minors. He had strikeout issues, but he also was talent through the roof. He had huge.
He's like an athleticism guy. He's the guy that like, athleticism plus a bad strikeout rate, I can handle it.
And when I say athleticism, also talent. It's like the talent that cures with athleticism. It doesn't always work out, and he was the example of it. But yeah, go on.
Well, there's a name that comes to mind is Javi Baez. Now, don't think about Javi Baez now. Think about all the value you would have gotten out of Javi Baez before, And I looked at his minor league stats, and he's striking out 28% of the time in minor leagues. I would have been like, no thanks, this guy's, But then Javi Baez was really great for a long time. I'm not. You have to kind of remember what he was when he was younger. And another player that comes to mind is Austin Riley. Because I was looking at his minor league stats. Austin Riley is striking out less in the major leagues than he did in the minor leagues. I mean, he was running 28s out there in the minor leagues, and now he's got, 24s in the major leagues. So, and I remember we were at a batting practice together, and it was Austin Riley, Michael Chavis, and maybe Acuna. Is that right?
They were all actually on the same team out here in the AFL.
Yeah, and they took a batting practice, and it was like rifle shot after rifle shot after rifle shot. And it is interesting to think about that grouping, because Chavis and Riley at the time, I think, were fairly well thought of, both of them.
Chavis might have been more well thought of at that time than Austin Riley, but they were both like high guys.
And then they were high strikeout rate guys, not insane athleticism, but really good batted ball stats. I bet you if we had their exit velocities, would have been like, oh yeah, these guys. Yeah. I'm sure we would have seen that they hit the ball, 115 in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
So that's what we were hearing. We could hear it with our ears. There's a video of O'Neal Cruz hitting the ball 122.4. You should play it with the sound on, because it's the loudest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so I feel like. I think that you've got
different pathways. I think I like your sort of approach better, because if you're just trying to have one rubric for prospect analysis, you're going to miss people.
Yeah, and mine definitely, and this is, by the way, because I use it as an example. It's not to say that the Robo Scout is that or anything like that, but I have seen lots of different things where sometimes it is just, here is what this spit out, and obviously you can filter out and set an algorithm to be like, all right, well, now I don't want guys that strike out more than this and this, but at the same time, it misses. I think the marriage of lots of different approaches putting in, and it just takes time. Like, that's how I approach into the scouting. I can't just look at a stat and be like, that's it, or they meet these qualifications, that's it, boom, he's the top guy, whatever. It's all of these different pieces that kind of play in a role, and lots of people do it a really, really great ways. And there's insanely smart people across the board. It is just not one simple way. But that was a bigger conversation of Eno and I were kind of talking about our biases and how the strikeouts were in there. And Bean. And Bean is kind of one of those.
Yeah, and our biases play out right here. This is an amazing thing we found. So I'm all excited now. I'm all in a tizzy. Oh, Zach Veen is much better than I thought. I can't believe he hit a ball 113. Now I'm excited about him. I'm super excited about him. Next on the list, we have is next on the list
your
is
buddy.
Ruiz.
Yeah, your buddy, Esteury Ruiz.
So we got data on him. You know, finally he hit a home run, 109.7. Well, I'm out on him, and should I eat crow? I don't know. 109.7 is not elite. You know, it would have been, what did I have? It would have been like a bottom 25th percentile actually. Last year, I have the leaderboard open. I feel.
Oh yeah, I don't remember if you said that, because you did the top 25, which was 112.5. I don't remember what the bottom was.
Yeah,
I feel like the bottom would have been a little bit lower. I feel like it would be like 107 and lower. But
here we go. So max EV 109.7 would have been 178th out of 252. So it's below average. It's below average. And so I get, because of my biases, I get to continually, I get to still poop on Esteury Ruiz, even though he has 2 homers this spring and one went 109.7.
And the stat that I added, he had the second most RBI of all players in spring, which I just wanted. That was the unique stat that.
Well, I did want to point out that the RBI and runs things, some of these teams just played some of their guys way more than others. I was looking at the Rockies, and Michael Toglia had 73. No, he had 82 plate appearances. That's a lot for spring. So, part of that's playing time. But Esteury Ruiz, they're releasing Christian Pache. He's going to have the full-time stings. He hit a ball 109.7. Should Eno eat crow? Should he shut up finally about Esteury Ruiz? And I'm not going to. I'm going to continue being biased because I opened up his entirety of his batted ball stats this spring, which, of course, are all when he's visiting Colorado. But he's got a 68-mile-an-hour foul ball, an 86-mile-an-hour sacrifice fly, a 70-mile-an-hour foul ball, a 64-mile-an-hour ground into double play. He's average exit velocity for the ones that are tracked is 83.7. Who was the other player that we wanted to look at?
Well, do you want to look at the positive?
The
inverse
okay.
one? Yeah, yes.
This is the funniest thing. So
we laughed out loud when we got
this
to
is
this one.
This is how dumb Eno Saris is. So I'm talking. This is my bias. I'm against Esteury Ruiz. 109.7 is not actually that great. I'm going to continue poo-pooing him. And Corbin Carroll steps to the plate, and he's having a great spring. Give us his regular stats that he led in.
Yeah, he is. He was tied for first in triples in spring. He was tied for third in doubles with 6. He was also 5th in walks and had the 4th best average. So those were his outlier stats in spring.
And I love Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll's the best. His max EV this spring is 109.7. But
the first thing I asked Eno after that was, what is the average look like? And this might blow your mind too, because if you're looking at plus, I mean, it's better to look at max EV, but if you're looking at average EVs, 90 plus is a good place you want to be. And 83 was Esteury Ruiz. Corbin Carroll, though, was much higher. Do you still have that number?
Yes, I've got 92.9. So he's getting to, even if the raw power might be similar, he's getting to his raw power much more often.
Much more often.
And so I taken as a single number, max EV has some power to it. It's better if you have 95th percentile. If you do like 95th percentile EV, it does have predictive power. It does describe your raw power. It doesn't describe everything about you as a hitter. Story Reeves is obviously exciting because of his elite skills with his feet. And even when I'm looking at this, I will see he's got some singles on some really poorly hit balls here, where he's got a double. No, that's the foul. He's got a single on a 61 mile an hour ball, and he's got a single on a 59 mile an hour ball. So this dude can run, and he's going to make the best out of any contact he does make. What I am worried about is it's not elite contact making. So I'm not sure how this is all going to fit together. I'm still not sure about it. Corbin Carroll gets to us, and if you just look at average EV, it's not that super powerful as a stat, but it can help you tell the story about why, or just feed your biases about why I think Corbin Carroll is going to have a better season than Story Reeves and is a better player.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people have had that little power they've wanted to use, like, where is he stealing bases or da-da-da. You could look at 109, and that could be the story of why people want to sell you against Corbin Carroll. But then you look at the average EV, and that's like, I don't know, that's like borderlining elite average EV if you're looking on a season total, right?
And the sample is small because he doesn't play in Colorado. So those are just all away games in Colorado.
Yeah, well, no, Arizona and Colorado share. That's actually
they share the
that's
ballpark.
right.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Those
okay.
are all
those
but
are
his away stats in there. So yeah, Corbin
Yeah.
Carroll, interesting in there. And I love that one. I love
But
that.
still, it's still half the sample, right? Like it's just his home games.
Yeah, only his home games. You don't get any of the other games. And
Yeah.
that was a great one, especially for us to be able to pair Esther Ruiz and Corbin Carroll together was just like, mwah. It was magnificent. It was our opus. A couple other ones we can end with. Two Giants, Blake Sable, third in OPS with a 1105. He also was fourth in walks. And Bryce Johnson led all of spring training in stolen bases with 12. And I believe both made the roster. Any thoughts on either one of these Giants prospects?
Yeah, Sable is a Rule 5 guy.
He was with the Pirates last year in the AFL, actually.
Yeah, and he's got really up and down contact numbers. It looks like the power should be there. He's not projected to have good power. But if he's going to access that power and strike out, not an alarming rate, is there at all a chance he unseats one of the veteran catchers?
But here's the other unique thing. He doesn't need to.
I'm not calling Bard a veteran, but you know what I mean.
He also plays other positions. He played left field in the AFL. He played first base in the AFL. His flexibility is what makes him fascinating because he can be a super utility player that he doesn't need to just break one of those catchers, which he clearly can do. He is versatile across the board, which is why this is a guy that could stay all season long, but maybe in more of a super util role.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a chance he unseats because he's got a 22% strikeout rate this spring with a 20% walk rate. So this is absolutely Farhan Zaidi's favorite type of player. And yes, you're right. He could be util and slot all around, but in terms of playing him the most often, the worst projected players are obviously Joey Bart with basically a mid 80s WRC plus projection. And then Roberto Perez, who's in camp on a 1-year deal, 34 years old, projected for a 79 to 80 WRC plus. So there's some meat on the bone there where, he could unseat one of those guys. I am the worst at the sort of soft scouting stuff, but if you wanted to watch some Blake Sable behind the plate and you thought he was actually decent at catching, I think there's a non-zero chance that he could even become the primary catcher. This is not, it's not unassailable. Like I said earlier, these are not obstacles he can't overcome.
And he was a Rule 5 guy, so they'd have to return him if they did. So,
So they're going to keep him on the roster as long as possible. But it's just going to be a question for me is how often he plays at catcher is going to determine how often how close he is to a starting gig.
Absolutely. One other hitter, and then just two quick pitching ones. James Outman stood out to me. He's a guy that made the Dodgers roster 8th best ISO in spring at 294. Again, we have very limited advanced stats, so you have to take it with a grain of salt of what I'm giving you, but a very high ISO number for a guy that was able to make the roster and really could be a force on this team. He's a good source of power and stolen bases. Could easily see him be a 15-15 guy if he were to give the amount of time. And he put up pretty good ISO numbers, at least when it was being tracked out here. So James Outman.
Yes. Also 28% strikeout rate, a few too many strikeouts. I would generally say the batting average won't be good, but in OBP leagues and daily leagues, deep daily leagues where you can slot him in only against righties, I think he'll be useful. In weekly leagues, Chris Taylor is going to take at bats away from him against lefties, and maybe just randomly Jason Hayward will take some at bats away from him. So I don't think he's going to be a good bulk guy, but daily leagues, he definitely has some usage there.
Two pitchers. Jared Schuster had the best spring whip that was tracked at 0.59, the best batting average against at 115, and the second best ERA at 145. Imperfect science because of what is tracked, but these are not those advanced stats that need to be. This is not imperfect. Actually, this is perfect. This is what they can give you in spring. Best whip, best average against, and second best ERA for Jared Schuster. And I'll just throw out the other one, Hayden Wisniewski, who we've talked a decent amount about, tied for 5th most strikeouts at 22. Those were two pitchers, prospect pitchers that stood out as far as spring dominance.
Well, I've been fully in on Hayden from the beginning, and absolutely an exciting young arm that I want on every single one of my teams. So that one's an easy one. The Schuster one's not as easy. I have an interesting situation here where I have 79 pitches tracked this spring with a 71 stuff plus. And then in the minor leagues last year, I have 74 pitches tracked in one start with a 114 stuff plus. Now, the minor league numbers need to be adjusted to make it to the major leagues. But even if you adjust it to major league stuff plus, you're talking about a person who will have at least a 105 stuff plus or better versus a 71 this spring. I'm gonna put a big IDK on this one. The prospect grades aren't there. It's not someone that I've watched a ton of. It's not someone I'm super familiar with. If you believe in Jared Schuster, go for it. I would rein in the enthusiasm a little bit based on the prospect grades, based on the poor spring stuff numbers. But there is this asterisk of good minor league stuff plus numbers just last year, plus the idea that he hides the ball really well. So I know I'm supposed to be definitive and give you answers, and that's my job. I'm not going to do it on this one. I'm just going to take a pass. And if you like Jared Schuster, continue liking him. You can talk about that, those minor league numbers last year.
How often have you ever seen a guy, it's a small sample size, but like that dominant inshore sample size with that horrific of a stuff plus?
Grayson Rodriguez, I have 250 pitches tracked. And it's basically like 125 in the minors last year and 125 in spring. He has 119.5 stuff plus in both samples. So
what a weird...
like that's the same. You know, Schuster is one of the biggest, and usually even start to start, you don't see big variations like that.
That's wild. All right, that is going to do it. You guys can let us know, what do you think on all those interesting stats from the prospect guys? Maybe some stuff you can pick and choose, and somehow we were able to compare Esteury Ruiz and Corbin Carroll, and not everybody can do that. We could somehow find a Kevin Bacon's 6 degrees of connection between Esteury and Corbin Carroll. So we'll track all that. Derek Van Riper is back tomorrow, as I'm told. So that is awesome. That is very,
quick
very
over under. Quick over under, real quick.
Yes.
Over under Esteury Ruiz homers 12.
Ooh, under.
Over under Esteury Ruiz ISO 180.
Under. It's got to be under if it's, yeah.
I'm thinking it.
I'm thinking it. But I think still okay. Stolen bases, 29.5 over under.
Over.
Okay, so we've created his
I'm
value.
just a little afraid that there's a Miles Straw situation here without the Miles Straw OBP or without the Miles Straw defense.
Ooh, I got the best one. Me and Bogman, we play this game. It's like chicken, but this is versus who has more stolen bases, Estoy Ruiz or Corbin Carroll this year.
Ah, oh man, this is really important for fantasy.
I'm going to go Corbin Carroll. I think Corbin
You're
Carroll could
going
lead the
Carroll?
league.
All right.
I think he could lead the league.
Oh, all right, that's exciting.
And you
I think
can't get
Ruiz
out of this.
could lead the league, too.
You can't get out of this. What is
But
your
he's
answer?
not good. I said Ruiz,
Oh, you did
but-
say Ruiz. Okay, Ruiz. All right.
but I don't like it. I'm not happy about it.
I can tell. By your face, I'm not happy about this at all. So, all right, there you go. That's what we're gonna do. That's a tough one. All right, DVR is back, so that's gonna be awesome. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. I will be back with you next week on Tuesday for Project Prospect. I did it again. I can't ever do it. It's ridiculous. That's Eno. I'm Welsh. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.